I'm Andy Mollison. This is SEO in 2025.
Andy, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
My SEO tip for 2025 is to use AI to help do the dirty work, the things, the boring bits that you don't really want to spend time doing. But don't forget to be human first with everything you're doing as well.
So you say don't forget to be human first. What does that mean in practice? What elements need to be done by a human?
Really the fact checking, first and foremost. I think that's a very dangerous part of AI, is that it's easy to make things up. The amount of times I've seen it really just make something up that is totally factually incorrect.
What's your most crazy example of that?
Crazy example, probably one everyone, a lot of SEOs have probably seen anyway, is the one where Google's AI overviews gave an answer of, yes, you should eat rocks for a healthy diet. As if you search for how many rocks should I eat, it gave a nice AI overview of saying, well, you should eat several a day to improve your diet. So
it's one definition of roughage, isn't it?
It's not a great bit of advice.
Okay. So fact check it thoroughly. Anything else that needs to be done by a human?
I think it's also about including your own style on things, tone of voice in particular. If you've got a client where you need to hit the mark with their particular tone of voice or your own tone of voice, give it your own style, your own interpretation. Otherwise, everyone is going to be using the same styles of writing and everything. Obviously, you can use prompts and things in ChatGPT or different AI models to try and give it some more flavor, but there's no better flavor or style than your own writing and your own style of writing.
So do you use AI to start off with, to come up with concepts, with ideas before, I guess, embellishing it using a real human?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's not just really with content that you want to be using things like ChatGPT or any AI model really, but also the kind of SEO boring parts like a meta description, for example, trying to think of 155 characters or whatever it is nowadays for a meta description. Let's say you've got 100 new products to add on your website. Well, that takes quite a lot of time. But if you can invest in a model to give you a starting point, and then you need to fact check and prove those 100 ones, then you've got a good time saving on your hand.
So what would you do then in terms of prompts to get that done to the best possible standard? Is it a case of just asking AI to review the content and make it into a synopsis in 155 characters, as you say?
It is a bit, but it's also just giving it as much information as possible. I think we, at the moment, with the way that AI is in place, is we kind of assume it's clever enough to figure it out for itself, but it's not really. So what more can you give it? What more information can you give it? Like, are there related products or similar things what do you want it to write about, basically? Like, tell it, spoon feed it. And if you can make that into an automated process so that you're not having to manually each time give that information, but it's in a spreadsheet, for example, that runs a script and takes that information and feeds it directly to it, well, you're saving time, but you're also giving it substantial information to say, write it in this tone of voice, read this document, and then write it in tone of voice in accordance to that document, and include a mention of this, and make sure you mention my brand name, or don't mention my brand name, or whatever it might be that you want to do. So spoon feed it, I think, is a thing. Give it as much information as possible.
And have you been able to completely automate the process from the creation of the meta description in ChatGPT or whatever AI software you're using to publishing that content in a CMS, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. Not quite into the publishing side of things yet, but that's going to be on the list of to-dos, because like I say, if you can automate it, go for it. But certainly there's plenty of very good Google Sheets plugins, for example, at the moment that work with ChatGPT or other models. And you could basically create a big spreadsheet of all the data you want it to know about, basically then drag that down your spreadsheet. And it could be you're doing one meta description or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000, doesn't really matter. Certainly thinking of, for example, on big e-commerce websites where you've got maybe a product catalog that changes every spring, every summer. Well, someone's going to have to write a meta description for that. It would save you a lot of time. So yeah, we've automated it from a spreadsheet point of view, but not quite yet from the CMS point of view. That'd be nice.
Are we not at a stage yet where Google is just reading the page and using whatever meta description it wants to anyway?
I mean, there is a side of that too, of course. I still think you've got to hit the mark with your basics and don't assume. Same thing as really the advice of don't assume with the AI models that they know what you're talking about. Don't assume that Google's going to pick a good meta description for you, because sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll take content from the footer or something just weird. So give it the information first and foremost, and then it's up to it really whether it wants to use it or use something else. But if you keep it blank, you're kind of leaving it up to Google to decide.
You also advocate using AI to assist with redirect mapping.
Yeah, basically anything where it does just take physically a lot of time. Certainly for us, we do a lot of website migrations. Certainly the last couple of years, we've seen more migrations than probably I've ever seen in nearly 20 years in the industry. Redirect mapping, so just literally from one URL to another, it can be really time intensive, in particular if someone's changing this website entirely in terms of structure and maybe changing content, removing content, adding a lot of content or removing a lot of content. Someone sometimes has to literally go through and sift through the new website manually, but you can get a robot to do that nowadays to go, right, give me your best guess at this redirect, and also give me a percentage of how much you trust that. It can come back with a measurement to say, well, I'm 100% sure this redirect is correct, or I'm 50% sure. And you might go, okay, well, actually, I know that 50% sure means I need a human to go and redirect map this. Whereas anything above 95% accuracy is pretty good to go.
Okay, so you're saying that anything above 95% accuracy, you'll accept that and won't manually check it?
It depends. It probably depends on the size of the site and sort of the investment you have to do it properly. But
so how does it give this trust score then? Where's it getting that trust score from?
We haven't quite developed this yet, but it's looking at how we can develop a model where it's going to have basically, is the URL exactly the same as it was before? In which case, it's 100% a match. Is the title the same as it was before? It's 100% a match. But if it's like there's slight changes in nuance or page content is slightly different, you're starting to reach sort of less and less accuracy with it. So trying to make a model where it's giving you that indicator.
And something else you suggest is uploading your tone of voice to AI chat to check content for brand alignment. So how does this work?
So with ChatGPT, for sure, you can do it. You can upload, let's say, like a PDF of your tone of voice or brand guidelines or style guidelines or whatever it might be. And it essentially becomes your chatbot with that tone of voice in mind.
Is there a certain format that this needs to be in?
No, not really. As long as it's text format in some way, can be a Google, can be a Word doc, can be a PDF. It doesn't really matter. It is able to interpret that. We've also uploaded, for example, nearly 50 pages of sort of a slide deck and get it to read that as well. Once it's interpreted all that information, it can then become really sort of like the client or your own brand guidelines, meaning that when someone puts content together for you, whether it be for the client, for yourself, for your own website, whatever, it's able to read that new content and go, well, does it meet the guidelines that I've just read through in this PDF or this presentation or whatever? Just a nice way of automatically sort of giving you that belt and braces approach to QAing your own content, I suppose.
Is more content always better when it comes to brand guidelines, or can more be perceived as fluff and confusing it a little bit?
I think there's got to be, again, an element of keeping it simple and understandable. Certainly, I sometimes see brand guidelines or tone of voice documents that are quite fluffy and quite dense. So maybe a bit of refinement before you upload it. But I think just make sure it's understandable. Don't go overboard with your tone of voice or brand guidelines first and foremost.
Are there any key elements that you're able to summarize to include in a tone of voice guidelines document?
Words to use and words not to use, or like words you like or words you don't like, or words the client likes and doesn't like. And that's been a good one, especially if you're producing a lot of content for a particular site. It can be easy, especially if you're moving across different copywriters or have a big content writing team. Sometimes you have a slip up where maybe a word is used that we know from experience the client doesn't like. But maybe that copywriter is, in their first week of writing and hasn't got that experience. Well, you can use that to go, right, well, if it spots this word, flag it. Obviously, you can do a Control F in your own manual checking, but it's an automated way of going, just tell me, have we used any of these bad words? Yes or no?
Great. And I've heard you mention ChatGPT quite a bit there. Is that your favorite software to use at the moment, or do you have other preferred AI tools to use for different tasks?
I think it's preferred mainly because of the integrations that are available for it, because it's essentially the most popular one. There's a lot of good extensions or like Google Sheets plugins for it, and it's easier to find integrations for it. Whereas if you go a bit more off-piste, there might be better models or as good a model, but it's just the integrations really.
So have you ever used AI for certain tasks and then thought, that's not been a good idea, I'm not going to use AI again for that particular task?
Yeah, I mean, in content production, for sure. I think that's probably pretty obvious for most people. But we had an idea of trying to use AI for content for an e-commerce website, category content, for example, only needing sort of 150, 200 words, sort of boilerplate introduction content about what's actually on the page. But actually, the time that you'd written that, you'd got it all in place and it'd been proofs and fact checked. Well, actually, somebody could have written it in that time. It was actually a lot easier to just go, well, actually, this is quicker in a human time. I also found that it just ends up using curious words that you just really wouldn't use when you're kind of, in our case, it was describing food products, when it uses words that you just wouldn't use when you're describing that kind of thing.
Is there not some sort of generic brand guidelines document that you can upload to try and ensure that it doesn't speak like that?
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah. So that would be sort of a version 2 of trying to create that automation. But I think it still means you've got to have that fact checking in place. You can't have something go out the door that hasn't had that that fact checking going on. So once you've done that, we found that sort of for that 150, 200 words kind of content, it's actually quicker to get somebody to do it with their proper knowledge of the site.
But is this something that you're going to be continuing to test over the coming months to see if AI gets better, then you can actually transfer the task back to AI?
Yeah, if we can get it to a point where actually you can remove those oddities to it, I suppose, it would become a time saver for sure. We at Reflected, we are part of the Human First Collective as well, though. So we always want to fact check things. We never send something out the door without it being fact checked. So it would have to be pretty bulletproof for it to be not subject to quite a bit of human intervention as well from our side.
Human First Collective. I don't think I've encountered that before. Tell me about the Human First Collective.
Yeah, sure. So Human First Collective is Reflect Digital. We're our SEO paid digital PR agency. We also have Lab as another agency. So Lab are a design and development agency, meaning we're able to do everything effectively as 2 separate agencies, whether you need a new website or marketing for that site and everything in between. We're able to do that and support you.
Got you. Okay, so it's a small knitted group of brands that aspire to at least initiate a content approach from a real life human being.
That's it. Yeah. So our USP really is that we are using behavioral messaging with all of our the work we do. So when we do, for example, on Lab building a new website, they're using behavioral insights before putting a design together or putting a navigation together or whatever it might be. So everything from our side is with that human element in mind, hence the human part of the brand name.
Hence the name, yeah. If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
I think focus on the time sinks, the things that are costing you time right now. Don't push them to one side. Really consider what's worth your investment, worth your time. If you're finding yourself doing, for example, those repetitive tasks that are every month you do the same report and it takes you 3 hours to do it. Well, how can you automate that process and get you that time back? Invest in efficiencies and automation because you've got the technology available to you now in sort of whether it's ChatGPT or Sheets with ChatGPT or whatever AI you can use. You've got the technology available to you to automate those and make your life easier in the long run. So prioritize those efficiencies, really.
And how do you determine if a task that you're doing isn't a good use of your time?
Well, yeah, that's the first thing I was going to say was, is it boring? Yeah, it's probably the first thing that comes to mind. Is it repetitive? Is it something that you can can create something that will do the job for you. If there's sort of rules or principles that can be repeated that are able to be given to a computer, or really any sort of script, can you automate that process and make it be something that is doing the dirty work for you?
Andy Mollison is head of SEO at Reflect Digital. You can find him over at reflectdigital.co.uk. Andy, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.